everyone, come on in because today we are doing another exclusive recap video. And this is going to be the one with Lee and also Chris. And this was right after they had the big thing going on where Janelle and lined all the men up and said, who said it? Who said it? I want to know who called me combative.
Well, then I'll deal with whomever said it. But so then where it come from?
So let's go ahead and watch the clip together, and I'm gonna give you my thoughts because I've already watched it, but I'm gonna rewatch with y'all because I got a lot to say about it. So let's get started.
Wow, that was a lot. Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to kind of play out like that.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it right there, right away. So what I want to do when I'm watching this video is I want us to bring in all the information we already know about Lee and Chris, and I want to see, and let me bring in all the information I know about them because we all have different opinions. But right now, since it's my video, I'm gonna go with my opinion, and I'm gonna bring in the information I have about Lee, and I'm gonna bring in the information I have about Chris. And what I know about Chris is very sensitive. This is what we know. We know that Chris, like I told you before, that I believe Chris has a lot of pride. He has a lot of ego. And sometimes that gets in the way. We saw that when he was dealing with when he was dealing with Jessica. And that kind of got in the way. He wasn't able to keep his calm and keep his cool. She let him trigger him and all that. So I know that about Chris. Chris has also told us about himself. But he said that he needs a soft woman. He needs a woman that's going to deal with him delicately. A woman that's going to talk to him softly. Okay? So he's told us about himself. We've watched him. We know that he's non-confrontational. Chris does not like to confront people. We know that Chris likes to lead with compliments. Chris likes to lead with smiles. We saw that very, very early on. He doesn't like a lot of drama. He really doesn't. I think that's why he also blows up when he can't avoid it. He really wants to run away from it. He smiles, he laughs, he gives you compliments. He tries to agree with you. But what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want confrontation. And that's why he never did like Jessica. Now, what I also know about Lee, I think initially we said that Lee didn't open up her mouth. She didn't talk. I believe that's kind of an act for Lee. Because like I said, when I watched Lee on Instagram, she couldn't stop talking. She had a lot to say. We saw a little bit of Lee poke out when she was over there talking to finally we see her stand up to Jessica when Jessica was trying to shade her because Christopher had bought Lee some shoes. And Lee called on the shade, and Lee bit back on Jessica. We finally saw Lee bite back. But for most of the show, we often see Lee not saying nothing. All we see Lee talking about are levels of dating. We see Lee talking about superficial things. But if you've been watching any of my videos, I've told you that I know Lee's not as quiet as she comes off to be, because when she was in that Instagram video with Katarina and Aries, she talked a lot. Lee likes to talk. And what I said was when Lee talks, most oftentimes what she's doing is she's talking about herself. So what I said was Lee's not quiet. Lee's fake quiet. I think Lee puts on this act because she wants to appear submissive. She wants to appear docile because I think that's what she thinks attracts men. But I actually don't think that's completely Lee. I think Lee has a voice and nothing is wrong with it. But I think she overcompensates and she tries to pretend one thing. But I think Lee actually has more of a voice. So I'm going to take this information, what I have about these two people, and now they're about to have a conversation about a very, very explosive moment. And I want to see what parts of their personality show up in this discussion. And right now, we already see that when Chris walked into the room, he says, whew, wow, that was a lot. I'm going to play it again.
Wow, that was a lot. Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to kind of play out like that.
Okay, so there goes Chris. He said, wow, intense. I wasn't expecting it to play out like this. And I kind of believe him. I don't think Chris expected it to blow up like that, and neither did anybody. Nobody thought it would blow up like that because remember, who set the bomb off? Who threw the hand grenade? Who was the one that threw Chris in front of the bus so that it did blow up like that? And we all know who it is. It was Messy Marie. Messy Marie did it. Did Chris in the deliberation room say that he had a combative moment with Janelle? I mean, not Janelle, Jessica? He absolutely said it. He absolutely said it. But what he wasn't expecting was Messy Marie to go out into out there in the forum and say some of the men think that you're combative. He wasn't expecting that. He wasn't expecting that what he said in the men's lounge would be put on front and center, and then he wasn't expecting to have to then get confronted by it by two of the most angriest, mean women on the show, which are Janelle and Jessica, and he was overwhelmed.
Well, then I'll deal with whomever said it. But so then where it come from?
So now here we have Chris, who felt blindsided, okay, who felt overwhelmed. Remember, he just didn't admit it. He sat there. They said, who said it? Who said it? Who said it? He didn't admit it. He didn't say nothing. He tried to move on for it. He told them, hey, let's just move on. Let's not talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. That's what he said to those women. But those women said, I want to know. And Janelle said, I want to deal with the person who did it.
Well, then I'll deal with whomever said it. But so then where it come from?
And all the men kept their mouths quiet, because they all kept their mouths quiet because nobody wanted to disrupt and challenge Janelle and Jessica. None of the men wanted to challenge Janelle and Jessica. They really wanted just to go away. They didn't want to inflame the situation anymore that Messy Maria had already done. So now here is Chris coming in here saying, woo, that was intense. Let's see how Lee responds. Let's go.
What do you mean?
It was a lot of emotions.
Being down there at the elimination, the feedback, all the other stuff. The group together is what blew me the most. It's very important that y'all are able to say what you feel or what you've experienced and be able to stand on it.
Okay. Did you hear what she said? Did you hear what she said? And did you hear how she said it? She said it very succinctly. She said it very bluntly. Now remember, Chris wants a soft woman. Chris wants a soft woman. I'm going to tell you right now, this is not a soft approach. Because what Lee actually did was, when he said he was overwhelmed, it was intense. And when he said he wasn't expecting that, okay? And what Lee immediately went to was immediately going to what she wanted.
It's very important that y'all are able to say what you feel or what you've experienced and be able to stand on it.
What she wanted, okay? She immediately went to, okay, well, first of all, this is not about you, okay? You're not nowhere in this. Right now, it's really only about Janelle, Jessica, and Chris. So right now, all of a sudden, we have a person coming to you saying, I'm overwhelmed with the situation that happened, okay? Everybody already knows Chris is a sensitive guy. Everybody already, I don't know if they already know it, I know it. And the response he gets from Lee in that moment is,
it's very important that y'all are able to say what you feel or what you've experienced and be able to stand on it.
I think what Lee just expressed was her own frustrations with Jessica and Janelle. Jessica and Janelle have been terrorists on this show. Jessica and Janelle have attacked a lot of people on this show. And what Lee is actually expressing right now is her own frustration with Jessica and Janelle. And you know what? We understand her frustration because we all feel it too. But in this moment, what Lee is saying is, when you have a person like Jessica and Janelle and you feel a certain way about them, you should be able to stand and say what you mean and what it means.
It's very important that y'all are able to say what you feel or what you've experienced and be able to stand on it.
And I get what she's saying, but in this moment, is this the type of support you should give your friend, even if it's not a love interest, when they just approached you and said, I'm overwhelmed by the emotion in the room and basically how I was attacked in the room? What I want to know is, why did Lee immediately go to saying to Chris, this is what should happen, this is what should be done, you should be able to stand on your own and say what you mean? Because now, sensitive Chris, if I'm Chris, I'm now saying, well, whose side are you on? Because I'm hearing you say you should be able to stand and stay on what you mean. What are you saying right now? Are you saying I should have spoken up? Are you saying I should have said it was me? Because everybody knows it was Chris. Everybody has deduced it was Chris, okay? Because the language that came out of Marie's mouth, we've heard that type of language before surrounding it from Chris. So it wasn't so hard to figure out who it was. That's why I kept saying this whole idea about who is it? They were doing that just so they could confront Chris. Everybody already knew, Lee included, who it really was.
I think that that's fair, and I think that we only get better when we're able to say, okay, maybe maybe I did come off that way. Like, because there's no way that came out, like in that elimination, and then nobody knows where it came from.
So what Lee is dancing around what she knows who said it. She knows Chris said it. So in a lot of ways, Lee is actually doing another version of Jessica. Chris just got done with trial on who said it. Chris just got done with trial downstairs with Jessica and Janelle, who said it.
Well, then I'll deal with whomever said it. But so then where it come from?
Now he's sitting in front of Lee, and Lee is saying, it's important to me that a person stands on their word, and there's no way that could be said, and nobody knows who said it. Lee is sitting here, and now she's confronting Chris. She may not be doing it in the same way that Jessica did it or Janelle did it. And let me tell you, this sort of confrontation doesn't feel good to a person like Chris. And I say, but I'm telling you this, that when someone has been beat up, and if you want to truly know why a person did what they did, you need to first come from a position of trying to understand, asking questions, okay? And not confronting them on what happened. And what I see happening right here with Lee is actually confronting Chris too. Lee's confronting Chris. And in a lot of ways, I think Lee is turned off. Okay. And what Lee is turned off from is because what Lee believes is that Chris should have confronted Jessica in that moment, because Jessica wanted to know who did it. She's telling Chris in that moment, you should have confronted her, because she's trying to wrap it in this bow and saying, well, if you confronted her, then maybe she can do some self-reflection and then she'll say some things she needs to work on. No, that's not what's going to happen, Lee.
I think that's fair, and I think that we only get better when we're able to say, okay, maybe I did come off that way.
That's not what's going to happen. Plenty of people, he's tried to tell Jessica about herself plenty of times before. It hasn't worked. And so now what Lee is saying is, you should have spoken up. You should have engaged with the confrontation with her. You shouldn't have shrinked. You shouldn't have held your tongue. You shouldn't try to go away. And what Lee is saying is, it's important to me. Why is it important to you? Because I think Lee looks at Chris as not being a good leader because he didn't stand up to Jessica. Well, here's the dilemma. And here's the dilemma I'm going to have for a lot of women. In one way, we wanted Chris to stand up to her, to say, I said it. Yeah, I said it. I stand on my word. Okay. On the other way, when he finally did stand up her, and actually he lost it. Now he's anger out of control. So what these women are actually asking for is a real delicate balance. They're asking for a balance that when a man says, I don't want to talk about anything anymore, right? Because he told Jessica that long ago. A man said, I'm not interested in you. I don't want to go out with you. He said that before plenty of times. What people are telling Chris is, you have to keep having the conversations no matter how many times this woman wants to have it. That's what these women are telling Chris. Chris has told this woman, Jessica, this several times throughout this series. He's told her, I don't want a woman that's confrontational, or I want a softer woman. He's told her, I don't think that we're a good fit. He's told her all these things. When she tried to confront him on who said it, he said, I don't really want to talk about it. I don't really want to have a conversation about it. He has tried to back up plenty of times. And this woman, Jessica, says, no, I want to keep talking about it. Now, Chris leaves. He comes back up into the room. He's exasperated. He's exhausted. He comes up with the woman he thinks that is on his side, who's going to be his comfort. And what does that woman do? That woman actually starts taking the same position as Jessica. Why didn't someone tell her? Why didn't someone speak up? But the reason why Lee is telling him to speak up is because Lee actually wants someone to get at Jessica, because Lee is a victim of Jessica. A lot of people are victims of Jessica and Janelle. And what Lee wanted Chris to stand up to Jessica, because Lee wanted Chris in a way to fight for her. She turned this into be something about her. This is what she turned it into, about fighting for me. And because she didn't see him fight for himself in that moment, she looks at it as, he can't fight for me. And it goes further than what we've heard Lee says. And he also means he can't lead me. He can't lead me. But go ahead, let's keep going on this.
It doesn't sit well with me that Jessica asked the guys who had an experience with her that made them deem her combative. And nobody would own up to it. Someone said it. This feedback did not come out of thin air.
Okay, so what she's saying is, you listen to what she's saying, no one would own up to it. No one was saying these words about owning up to it. What this is saying is, why wouldn't any of these men speak up? Because what Lee is upset about, Lee's actually not on the side of Jessica. We know that. We know Lee doesn't like Jessica. She's not protecting Jessica. She's not standing up for Jessica. What she's actually saying in another kind of way, okay, is what she's saying is, why didn't any of these men speak up and tell Jessica about herself? Why didn't anybody handle Jessica? That's what she's saying. It didn't just come out of thin air. Why are all these men so scared of Jessica? And we've actually seen it all season long. We've seen it all season long of all of these men. What they do is they try to avoid confrontation with Jessica and Janelle. We saw Quentin trying to avoid confrontation with Janelle. When Janelle got all riled up, he tried to calm her down. He tried to have the one-on-one. Janelle wasn't hearing it. She said, I did nothing wrong. Why do I have to be the one who changes? He backed up. He said, okay, so all right, I'll leave it alone. If this is what you want to do, if this is who you want to be, I'll let you be who you want to be. That's what he kept telling Janelle. He wasn't trying to fix her. He said, you know what? If this is who you want to be, then this is who you want to be, and I'm going to be out. Because we all know the Quentin and Janelle story is not going to last. He's going to be out. And now here we have Chris. People telling Chris, why didn't you speak up to Jessica? Why didn't you tell her about herself? Why didn't you help her learn and grow? Because you know what Chris has done with Jessica too. People don't want to keep investing in people, trying to help them along, trying to help them see flaws in themselves when those people don't want to see it themselves. So here is Lee, once again, saying, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you speak up? And now what she's turned this to she's turned this to be about a problem with Chris because he didn't stand up to Jessica. Why do so many people want Chris to stand up to Jessica and say, I was the one that said it about you? Why? This is not the first time Jessica's heard this. What difference does it make if someone says, I said it? You think all of a sudden now she's going to say, oh, okay, now that you said it, I'm going to start believing it. She's not going to start believing it. This is why I tell you, don't get in the ring with these people because these people are hard-headed. People keep saying, oh, well, maybe if you would have said this or done this, then maybe she would have listened more. She ain't going to listen. And what Chris was saying is, I've said it a million times. Why do I keep needing to have confrontations with this woman over this issue? How many different ways do I have to say it? I think Lee is handling Chris all wrong because Lee is speaking from a place of her own frustration with Jessica. And what she's not being in this moment is she's actually not being a friend to Chris. That's what she's doing. She's too busy trying to get her own feelings sorted out and soothed by someone confronting Jessica because she doesn't want to do it. And instead of looking at that he just got an ass whooping out here by two women, got lined up on the pedestal or whatever, the bench, and chewed out.
Well, then I'll deal with whomever said it. But so then where it come from?
This is not being a good friend. Whether or not she's interested in being with him romantically, it's actually not being a good friend. It's not actually being supportive in a moment when a person has just told you, I just got beat up out there. I've been overwhelmed with all the emotions that are flying around. And the first thing you start telling them is what you should have done differently. You should have done this. You should have done that. That's not supportive. And what I know Chris is seeing in Lee right now is she's also not the soft woman. That's what he's seeing right now. He's also seeing that, wow, Lee may talk soft. She may not open up her mouth all the time, but the way that she's handling him right now is not softly the way he says he wants to be handled. Let's keep going.
The way that the word selection, that's on him. So I can't tell another man how to say something.
Okay, so hear what he just said there. He said the word selection of Maurier is on him because what he's saying is, when I was in the men's lounge, I was talking to men. That's who I was talking to. Men talk differently with men than women. Just like Christopher has told these women, I know you may talk a certain way out in the world. You may have talk a certain way at work. But when you come and talk to me, I need you to talk to me differently. That's the one thing he's told these women. And what he's saying right now is, listen, when I was in the men's lounge, I might have used some harsher words, the word combative. but I was talking to men. That's who I was talking to, men. Now, when Messi Marie gets out there in front of everybody, he's saying, I can't control the word choice of Mario. And what he's saying is Mario chose the wrong words. And I agree. I said that in my last video. I don't know why when Mario had this conversation with Jessica, he didn't take some heat off of it. I didn't understand why he didn't do that, because I'm saying to myself, if I had heard the words that Chris had used, even if I went to a loved one, a girlfriend, anyone, I would take some heat off that. I would make sure she got the message, but I wouldn't put so much hot sauce on it. And what Chris is saying is he did not handle Jessica delicately. That's what Chris is saying. Chris has always said, I want you to handle me softly, and in turn, I will handle you softly. And what he's saying is when Mario became the mouthpiece of the men, he did not handle Jessica delicately. He handled Jessica, just like I said in my last video. He put that message on a trash can and shoved it down her throat. And what he's saying is, that's not my fault, Lee. But now let's see how Lee responds, because now, so once again, here is Chris having to defend himself once again for his thoughts, his opinion of a woman, and now he's having to defend himself to Lee as well. This is not what Chris is looking for from a mate or a partner. What he would have wanted from Lee was to be more supportive and say, yes, I could see how you were overwhelmed with all of the attacks. And instead, what Lee is doing is she's trying to hold his feet to the fire because he didn't want to get into a confrontation.
Everybody else is saying, that wasn't my experience. I never said that. But somehow y'all had a unanimous decision of...
Exactly. Just like what you said. It is, Lee.
So now we have women who actually want men to get in confrontations with women. That's what we want. That's what we're asking for out here, women. We're wanting men to confront women on things. Why? Why do men have to confront women? Why can't the Jessicas and Janelle learn from other women? Why can't women be their village to teach them this isn't how you talk to men? Why do we need the heavy hand of a man to keep confronting Jessica? Because you know what happens when you're so tough and you need such a strong leader and you need such a heavy hand? What ends up happening is what happened in that exit when he got kicked off the show. That's what happens. That's what you set yourself up for. Was it wrong that Chris went there? It was wrong. But you know what else is wrong? It's wrong that when someone has already told you something 2, 3, 4, and 5 times, but you don't walk away from it. You keep asking, you keep poking, you keep asking more. And then finally the person gets so fed up with you, they blow up. And when a man blows up, it's far worse. It's always far worse than when a woman blows up on a woman. Kicked off the show. That's what happens. That's what you set yourself up for. Was it wrong that Chris went there? It was wrong. But you know what else is wrong? It's wrong that when someone has already told you something 2, 3, 4, and 5 times, but you don't walk away from it. You keep asking, you keep poking, you keep asking more. And then finally the person gets so fed up with you, they blow up. And when a man blows up, it's far worse. It's always far worse than when a woman blows up on a woman.
So what he said was what y'all said in the lounge.
Well, I didn't say combative. I just said I need a softer woman.
Yes.
That's all I said.
And so now what you see here is you see Chris backing up. Because like I said, I know about Chris. Chris doesn't like to hurt feelings. Chris doesn't like to say things harshly to other people, right? Because not only does he not want it for himself, he doesn't want other people treating him that way. So he knows he used a harsh word when it came to combative. So now what he's doing is saying, well, I didn't use the word combative. I used this. We all know he used it. He didn't call her combative, but he said we had a combative situation. And then maybe in that other little post interview, he did say she's combative. But I think that was filmed after the initial conversation he had in the men's lounge. Nonetheless, he's used the word, and the word is what has upset Jessica. Now, does Lee think that Jessica's not combative? No. Lee knows she's combative. So she doesn't really have a problem with the fact that Chris labeled her combative. What she's having a problem with is that he didn't stand up to her. Lee wanted Chris to stand up to him because maybe that would have made Lee think he's more leader. He's more tough. He's more a man. So once again, we're judging manhood and we're judging leadership by the way in which a man confronts a woman. Nah, I'm not with that.
I'm big on black and white though. Like
I'm the same way. I agree.
I think you like gray.
Noted.
So here she is. She said she's big on black and white. And he said, no. And he said, so am I. She says, no, I think you like gray. Because what she's saying about Chris and what she's saying between the black and the white and the gray is that Chris is tiptoeing around things. And what she wants him to say is, I said it, I stand by it, and I'm going to confront Jessica on it. Why? Why are people continually wanting a man to confront a woman? Why? Isn't that the job of other women, to be able to talk to other women and say, hey, sis, you out here moving wrong, dealing with men. You should not keep inviting confrontation with other men. You shouldn't do that. You see, men have been taught now how to deal with. Back in the day when men were more barbaric, okay, maybe a man would have gone off on Jessica. Maybe those men might have even hit Jessica in the mouth for some of the things that she says and does. But men have been taught. You can't do that. You can't treat a woman that kind of way. You can't talk to a woman that kind of way. And now, when men sit back and let women run wild, now all of a sudden, now they're chastised for letting women run wild and let the women say whatever they want to say. Let me tell you, there is a big problem on this show. There's a big problem on this show, and there's a big disconnect between the women and the men. And I'm going to tell you what the disconnect is. The disconnect is this. There are 3 men on the show, like I said. There's Maurier. There's 4 men, but I'm not even going to consider Maurier part of the crew no more because he's part of there with the Mean Girl crew. I'm going to say that the men are Chris, Phil, and Quentin. Like I said before, all of these men in one way or the other has asked for a softer woman. They've all asked for it and none of them are getting it. Quentin has told Janelle that the last girlfriend I had didn't give me any compliments, didn't appreciate me. No softness. No appreciation, no gratitude, nothing. Quentin over here is cooking for Janelle, dismissing all her bad attitude, all her bad mouth, cooking for her, telling her, I'll wait on you hand and foot. She's sucking it up. She ain't cooking. She don't want to work out. She don't want to do nothing. He's over here doing whatever he can to try to please her. Okay. You got Phil over here who's rubbing the feet of Aries. Okay. Who's rubbing on the feet of Aries. Like I said before, what's Aries doing? So once again, you got Phil over here catering to Aries, bringing flowers, rubbing feet. And you got all these women who don't want to have any type of nurturing qualities. Phil has already talked about he was with an ex-wife. She wasn't nurturing to him. She wasn't affectionate. She didn't show feelings. She didn't show emotions. He's another one out here looking for a softer woman. You got Quentin looking for a softer woman. You got Phil looking for a softer woman. You got Chris over here looking for a softer woman. But none of these women want to show up and be that person. And instead, what they're doing is they're looking at Quentin, they're looking at Phil, they're looking at Chris, and they're saying, we don't want to be the softer women. What we want to know is, why aren't you confronting women?
Well, then I'll deal with whomever said it. But so then where did it come from?
Why should men be called on to confront women? That's a dangerous area to get in, which goes back to what I said. When you need the heavy hand of a man to confront you and to tone you down, you're the problem. You shouldn't need such a heavy hand. You shouldn't need a man to come in and correct you like that. You should be able to take the correction from other women who will do it more delicately and more softly. But Jessica doesn't want to accept it from anyone. So I'm with Chris. I don't need to put no more effort into helping a person like Jessica, telling her the same thing over and over again. I don't need to do that. And if you're going to look upon me as being a bad person because I don't want to get in no more confrontation with Jessica, then guess what? You're not the woman for me either. That's what Chris ought to say to Lee. You're not the other one either, because if you're here to tell me how you think I should have confronted another woman, then you're not the woman for me either. Because not only do I not want to confront another woman out here in the street, you shouldn't even really want me to handle you like that. That is why Chris keeps saying, I want a delicate woman, because I don't want to have to do this level of confronting you. I don't want to have to be at these levels. I don't want my house to have to operate like this. And instead of women getting this, instead of what they're telling Chris is, we need you to buck up more and handle these women. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Like I said, I don't agree with where Chris went to on that final moment when he blew a gasket and he started cussing out Jessica. But you know what else? I don't put all of it on him, because too many people kept coming to Chris saying, you ought to be the one to hit it head on. You ought to be the one to get into the confrontation with Jessica. You ought to be the one to admit what you said about her. No, because when I was talking to men. Not only was I talking to men, I was talking in a safe space of the deliberation room, the men's lounge. And now what you want me to do is you want me to take the speech I use with men and you want me to deliver that to a woman, and you want me to do it in an open forum? Absolutely not. I'm on Chris's side on that. He shouldn't have confronted her. He shouldn't have dressed it. He's done it enough. He's done enough. He has done enough in trying to get Jessica to see that, hey, I'm not interested. I don't like your style, and that's okay. And at that last little dinner, she wouldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. For the man who doesn't want confrontation, she kept poking him and poking him, till finally he said, dang, okay, you want some confrontation? I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. But I'm not going to sit here and keep listening to this, because I don't want to get in no fight with you. But if you want to keep pushing me and pushing me and pushing me, then you're going to get it. You are going to get it. And he lost it. It's unfortunate. But guess what, Chris? I understand. I completely understand. That's why I know I wouldn't deal with Jessica or Janelle. And that's why I told everybody, walk away. It ain't worth it. Because if you get in here and you think you're going to help these women, you're not going to help them, because you're not the first one that has tried to help them. These women are 30, 40 years old. There have been plenty of women, plenty of men who have come to try to help them. It comes a point in time where if they want the help, they need to start listening and changing. They don't want the help. And I'm not going to be a person that shoves the help down their throat. And that's what Lee was asking Chris to do. I want you to shove it down her throat, because as Lee says, maybe if you tell her, then she can look at herself and say, okay, maybe there's some things I should change. No, Lee, that's not how you're dealing with. That's not how you do. Lee wanted Chris to do her dirty work, because Lee really wants to tell Jessica off, but she don't want to stand in the ring with her. So instead, she's mad at Chris and saying he's not a man, he's not a leader because he didn't stand up to her. That's not the job of Chris. Jessica's not his woman. Jessica is not his wife. It is not his job to continually do correction on Jessica. That is not his place. That is the place of Jessica's village, people who love and care for Jessica to do that. And if those people are not standing up for her and telling her, sis, you got a problem, then who is it for Chris to be doing that? I'm Team Chris. I may not have liked the way he handled it in the end, but I'm Team Chris in this moment. I'm going to tell you what, if any of you people are interested in being with a man like Chris, maybe you are and maybe you aren't. But the way that Lee handled Chris was all wrong. She handled Chris from a point of criticism as opposed to a place of understanding what he was trying to do. She wasn't sympathetic. She wasn't empathetic. And what she was busy doing was criticizing the way he handled it. And she was too busy looking like, in a lot of ways, she was sounding like Jessica. She may not have attacked him the way that Jessica did, but in her own way, she looked down on him and she attacked him. She is not the woman for Chris either. Chris, keep looking. Keep looking. Anyway, that's it, y'all. Talk to you later. Bye.